Here's a question no one ever asks until it's too late. What happens when a country kicks out the very people holding it together? When they think they can replace Filipino workers overnight, only to watch their hospitals, schools, and businesses fall apart like dominoes. From the Middle East to Europe, this story repeats. Nations that once thrived suddenly begging for Filipinos to come back. Because the truth is simple. Once you lose the hands, the heart, and the hustle of a Filipino, you lose everything. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type interested in the comments, and I will give you a heart. 15. Saudi Arabia. For decades, Saudi Arabia's healthcare system stood strong on the shoulders of Filipino nurses, caregivers, and hospital staff. From Riyadh to Jeddah, it was the quiet efficiency of Filipino professionals that kept clinics running and patients cared for with compassion. But in 2011, everything changed. Saudi Arabia introduced stricter labor policies, pushing thousands of Filipino workers out in a wave of forced departures. At first, officials brushed it off. We'll fill the gap locally, they said, but that confidence quickly turned into chaos. Hospitals began reporting severe staffing shortages. Emergency rooms that once ran like clockwork slowed to a crawl. Patients waited hours, sometimes days for care. Complaints poured in from families across the kingdom about declining service and overworked medical teams. Within a year, the Saudi Ministry of Health was facing a nightmare. The local replacements lacked the experience, language skills, and global standard training that Filipino nurses brought. Many Saudi citizens publicly expressed regret online, even demanding the return of their trusted kabayan caregivers who had become part of their households and hospital communities. The government had no choice but to reverse its policy. By 2013, Saudi recruiters were once again flying to Manila, offering better salaries, housing, and benefits to bring Filipino healthcare workers back. Hospitals slowly recovered, but the message was crystal clear. The heart of Saudi Arabia's healthcare didn't beat without Filipinos. It wasn't just a labor issue, it was a human connection issue. Filipinos didn't just treat patients, they treated families with dignity and empathy, something money couldn't replace. If you're proud of how Filipino nurses brought entire healthcare systems back to life, type respect in the comments because that's exactly what they deserve. 14. KUOY. In 2018, the world watched as relations between the Philippines and Kuwait hit breaking point. After a series of heartbreaking reports about the abuse of Filipino domestic workers, the Philippine government did something bold. It imposed a deployment ban. Kuwait, in response, fired back with its own ban, cutting off the flow of Filipino workers who had kept their homes, hospitals, and hotels running for decades. At first, Kuwaiti officials were defiant. We can replace them, they said. There are workers from other countries willing to come. But within months, the reality hit like a sandstorm. Families started struggling. Homes once kept spotless now fell into disorder. The elderly and children, once lovingly cared for by Filipino nannies and helpers, suddenly lacked consistent, trusted care. Then came the bigger shock. The healthcare and construction sectors started to crack. Hospitals ran short of nurses. Engineering firms couldn't find skilled labor with the same precision, dedication, and communication skills as Filipinos. The cracks in Kuwait's system widened into chaos. By 2019, social media in Kuwait was filled with posts from local citizens openly calling for the return of their Filipino helpers. One Kuwaiti employer even said, "We didn't just lose workers, we lost family." That statement summed it all up. What Kuwait thought was just a labor issue turned out to be a cultural and emotional one too. Realizing their mistake, the Kuwaiti government reopened negotiations with Manila. By 2020, a new labor protection agreement was signed, ensuring better conditions for Filipino workers and their triumphant return. The lesson? You can replace bodies, but you can't replace heart. If you believe no one works harder and loves deeper than a Filipino abroad, type pride in the comments, because that pride is power. 13. Qatar. Qatar, the land of gleaming skyscrapers, luxury hotels, and world-class airlines, a place that built its global image on excellence and service. But here's the thing no one expected. Behind that polished reputation stood an army of Filipinos. They weren't just workers. They were the reason guests smiled, flights ran smoothly, and 5-star ratings stayed 5-star. Then came 2017. A regional diplomatic crisis forced many Filipino workers out as Qatar adjusted its labor priorities. Government officials thought the transition would be seamless. We'll recruit from other countries, they said, but what followed was nothing short of a hospitality nightmare. Hotels that once glowed with efficiency began receiving negative reviews. Service slowed, guests complained about delays in room cleaning, cold food, and poor communication. Even Qatar Airways, known for its near-perfect service, faced growing challenges in maintaining its elite image. Tourists noticed, and the world began to whisper, what happened to Qatar's service? The truth? They lost their secret ingredient, the Filipino workforce. Skilled, patient, disciplined, and endlessly adaptable. By 2019, the damage to reputation was too visible to ignore. The Qatari government quietly reversed its policies and started recruiting Filipinos again, this time with improved contracts and better housing benefits. The change was immediate. Service quality rebounded, and customer satisfaction returned to pre-crisis levels. A hotel manager in Doha summed it up perfectly. When the Filipinos came back, the heart of our industry came back with them. The Filipinos didn't just serve customers, they served pride. And when they left, Qatar learned the difference between luxury and loyalty. If you believe Filipinos are the reason excellence still exists in many industries abroad, type future in the comments, because that's what keeps nations running. 12. United Arab Emirates. Dubai. Abu Dhabi, two cities built to impress the world, where glass towers touch the clouds and luxury lives on every corner. But here's the truth nobody talks about. Behind every glittering skyscraper, every spotless mall, and every five-star hotel stood the hands, sweat, and discipline of Filipino workers. They were the silent architects of the UAE dream. Then came 2020, and the pandemic changed everything. Thousands of work permits were suspended, flights were grounded, many Filipinos were sent home. Officials believed the gap could easily be filled with local or regional hires. But what followed was something no one saw coming: a silent collapse. Construction projects that once moved like clockwork slowed to a halt. Hotels struggled to maintain service standards. Restaurants faced longer wait times, and entire teams had to be retrained from scratch. Even hospitals began feeling the pinch as Filipino nurses, the lifeblood of patient care, left in waves. Tourism, one of the UAE's main economic engines, dropped sharply. It wasn't just because of travel restrictions, it was because the quality of service people had come to expect simply wasn't there anymore. By 2022, the UAE made a full reversal. The government reopened recruitment, offering higher wages, better housing, and stronger labor protections to bring Filipinos back. And once they did, everything began to run smoothly again. Construction sped up, hotels recovered their sparkle, and tourists returned. One Dubai engineer said it best: Filipinos don't just work, they build miracles. The UAE learned a hard truth: without Filipinos, progress pauses. If you're proud of how Filipinos helped build some of the most advanced cities on Earth, type Proud Pinoy in the comments, because you should be. 11. Malaysia. Malaysia once had one of Southeast Asia's fastest growing service industries. Hotels buzzing with travelers, restaurants filled with chatter, and retail stores packed with friendly faces. But in 2016, that warm, welcoming energy started fading. Why? Because the government tightened labor laws, forcing thousands of Filipino workers to leave. At first, officials said, we'll manage, others will fill the gap, but within months, reality smacked them right in the face. Hotels that once ran like clockwork started missing check-ins. Restaurants took forever to serve meals. Customer complaints shot up, and tourism, one of Malaysia's economic lifelines, began to stumble. The charm was gone, and everyone knew it. You can replace uniforms, but not attitude. Filipinos brought empathy, humor, and care. That natural malasakute that turned simple service into human connection. When they left, Malaysia's service industry lost its rhythm. By 2019, business owners started begging the government to bring Filipinos back. One hotel manager in Kuala Lumpur told a local newspaper, "We tried workers from 5 countries, but no one could match the skill and sincerity of Filipinos." That statement spoke volumes. So Malaysia quietly reversed its restrictions, salaries went up, benefits improved, and new training programs were introduced, all designed to attract Filipinos again. Within a year, things were back to normal. Hotels regained their sparkle, restaurants buzzed again, tourists smiled. It wasn't just about skill, it was about spirit. Filipinos didn't just work hard, they worked with heart. You believe Filipino dedication is the secret ingredient that keeps industries alive across Asia? Type in the comments, because that's exactly what Filipinos bring everywhere they go. And Japan. Japan, the land of precision, politeness, and progress. But even a nation built on efficiency hit a wall when it tried to handle one of its biggest challenges, an aging population. For decades, Filipino caregivers were the quiet heroes of Japan's elder care system, patient, compassionate, and fluent not just in the language, but in empathy. Then came 2010. Japan decided to tighten its immigration rules, adding difficult Japanese language exams that many Filipinos couldn't pass. Overnight, hundreds were barred from entry. Officials believed locals could take over, but what followed was nothing short of heartbreaking. Nursing homes began running short on staff. Elderly patients who were once bathed, fed, and comforted daily suddenly waited hours, sometimes days, for attention. Families couldn't find trustworthy caregivers. Hospitals reported burnout among remaining nurses. Japan's reputation for disciplined care was cracking. By 2018, the government finally admitted the mistake. They eased the requirements and reopened doors for Filipino caregivers, and the difference was instant. Elderly patients smiled again, families breathed easier, the warmth returned. A Tokyo nursing home director said, "Filipinos bring something no training can teach, compassion that heals." That was the truth. Japan didn't just need more workers, it needed more humanity. Today, Filipino caregivers once again form the emotional backbone of Japan's elderly care. Proof that efficiency alone isn't enough to care for people. You need heart. If you believe compassion is a superpower, Filipinos share with the world. Type care in the comments because kindness is a language the whole world understands. 9 PHP-go. Singapore, the city that never sleeps, the nation that runs like a Swiss watch. Efficiency is their national pride. But when the pandemic hit in 2020, that well-oiled system suddenly began to rust. All because one crucial group couldn't return, the Filipinos. For years, Filipino domestic helpers, nurses, and service staff had kept Singapore's homes, hospitals, and hospitality industry alive. They weren't just workers, they were family. They raised children, cared for elders, and stood as the unseen support behind every successful household. Then the borders closed. Thousands of Filipino workers were locked out. Singapore thought it could manage for a few months, but soon reality hit hard. Families struggled. Working parents had no one to care for their kids or aging relatives. Hospitals faced staff shortages that risked patient safety. Even small cafes and hotels began feeling the strain. One Singaporean mother went viral after posting online, "Our helper isn't just an employee, she's part of our family. And we didn't realize how much until she couldn't come back." That one statement summed up the entire nation's sentiment. By late 2021, Singapore reversed course, reopening recruitment and fast-tracking permits for returning Filipino workers. Employers greeted them at airports with tears and flowers because it wasn't just about labor, it was about love. Today, Filipinos once again form the backbone of Singaporean homes, hospitals, and businesses. And if the pandemic taught Singapore anything, it's this: efficiency collapses without empathy. If you believe Filipinos deserve more than just a thank you, if you believe they deserve recognition and respect, type respect in the comments right now. 8. South Korea. South Korea, a nation of innovation, precision, and speed. From Samsung to Hyundai, this country built its global reputation on relentless efficiency. But behind every assembly line and factory floor, there was a workforce the world rarely noticed. Filipinos, skilled, disciplined, and adaptable. In the early 2010s, South Korea made a bold decision. Tighten visa rules, limit foreign workers, and rely more on locals. On paper, it looked patriotic. In reality, it was economic suicide. Factories that once ran 24 hours a day suddenly faced labor shortages. Production deadlines were missed. Quality control slipped. Machinery sat idle because there weren't enough trained technicians to operate them. For a country obsessed with output and perfection, this was chaos. A 2015 report by the Korea Employers Federation even admitted it. The absence of Filipino workers significantly affected manufacturing performance. Many small and mid-sized companies pleaded for policy changes. By 2016, South Korea quietly reopened its doors, prioritizing Filipino workers again, especially for tech, electronics, and shipbuilding industries. Because here's the truth: machines can't replace dedication, and automation can't replicate heart. One factory manager in Busan said it best: Filipinos work like family, they fix problems before they're told. That mindset is priceless. Today, Filipinos remain a vital part of South Korea's economic engine, respected not just as laborers, but as partners in progress. South Korea learned a hard truth. Without Filipinos, the gears of industry grind to a halt. If you're proud of how Filipinos are helping power some of the world's biggest economies, type power in the comments, because Filipino strength isn't just physical, it's personal. 7. Italy. Italy, the land of art, fashion, and family, but behind those cobblestone streets and cozy family dinners lies a heartbreaking truth. Italy's population is aging fast. Nearly 1 in 4 Italians is over 65, and for years, one group quietly carried the burden of care: Filipinos. From Milan to Rome, Filipino caregivers became the lifeline of Italy's aging society. They were trusted with the most sacred task, caring for someone's parents and grandparents, and Italians loved them for it. Patient, gentle, endlessly kind. But in 2011, new immigration laws made it harder for foreign caregivers, including Filipinos, to work legally. The result? A national crisis. Families were left scrambling. Nursing homes overflowed. Elderly Italians, once surrounded by warmth and routine, found themselves alone. And by 2014, headlines screamed of shortages in home care. Desperate families paid double or triple just to find a Filipino caregiver. Because what Italy learned the hard way was this: you can't regulate compassion. You can't replace trust. The Filipinos returned, and almost overnight, balance was restored. Homes were filled again with laughter, warmth, and care. Today, Italy openly acknowledges that Filipino caregivers are not just employees, they are family. One Italian woman put it perfectly: when my mother passed, it was our Filipino caregiver who cried the hardest. That's not a worker, that's love. Italy's lesson: you can build monuments, paint masterpieces, and craft fine wine, but without care, even a beautiful country grows cold. If you believe compassion is the strongest form of strength, type heart in the comments, because that's what Filipinos bring wherever they go, not just skill, but soul. 6. Canada. Canada, the land of maple leafs, politeness, and universal healthcare. But here's a fact they don't say out loud: that entire healthcare system, it runs on Filipino nurses. For decades, Filipino nurses have been the steady heartbeat of hospitals from Toronto to Vancouver. They're the ones who never complain about long shifts, who hold patients' hands when no one else can, who bring human warmth into cold hospital corridors. But in the early 2000s, Canada decided to tighten its immigration and licensing policies. Fewer Filipinos could come in. Many who were already there couldn't get accredited fast enough. At first, the system didn't notice. Then cracks appeared. By 2008, hospitals were short-staffed. Wait times exploded. Burnout rates soared. Doctors went on record saying, "We can't keep this up." It took nearly a decade for Canada to admit the truth. They needed Filipinos. In 2015, Ottawa reversed the policies, launching fast-track programs for internationally educated nurses with special focus on Filipino applicants. And now more than 35% of foreign-trained nurses in Canada come from the Philippines. That's tens of thousands of professionals who literally hold the system together. Ask any patient recovering in a Canadian hospital today who stayed by their bedside through the night, and chances are it's someone named Maria, Joy, or Carlo, a Filipino nurse. The Canadian healthcare system learned the hard way: advanced technology can't replace empathy, and machines can't wipe away tears. If you've ever been cared for by a Filipino nurse, type salute in the comments. Because those smiles behind the masks, they're not just saving lives, they're saving dignity. 5. United States. America, the land of freedom, innovation, and opportunity. But let's be brutally honest. Without Filipino nurses, the US healthcare system would have collapsed years ago. For decades, Filipino nurses have been America's invisible army. From New York to Los Angeles, they've held the front lines of healthcare, 12-hour shifts, double duties, no complaints. They don't just do the work, they become the care. But in the early 2010s, the US decided to cut down work visas for foreign nurses, thinking local nurses could fill the gap. Big mistake. Hospitals started drowning. Shortages hit every state. In California alone, there was a shortfall of nearly 40,000 nurses. By 2015, patients waited hours in emergency rooms. Burnout soared. By 2018, hospital administrators were begging Washington to reopen the gates for Filipino nurses. Because here's the thing, American hospitals didn't just lose workers, they lost their soul. Filipinos brought a kind of warmth you can't teach in medical school. Empathy mixed with efficiency, humor under pressure, kindness even when exhausted. That's why today, 1 out of every 4 foreign nurses in the US is Filipino. They're not just filling gaps, they're saving the system. One hospital director in Texas said, when our Filipino nurses left, patient satisfaction dropped like a rock. When they came back, hope came back. And that's not just poetic, it's truth. The US learned that without Filipinos, healthcare stops feeling human. If you're proud that Filipino nurses are America's real frontliners, type frontline in the comments. Because when others see crisis, Filipinos see duty. And that's what keeps America alive.